Many people have been oblivious to the events over the past few weeks alone. However, if we take a close look at recent events, stable coins have received a lot of attention. Actually, you're telling me that Stripe introduced stable currency in more than 100 countries in just 1 week. Ramp introduced stable currency cards. Superstate introduced on-chain stock. Robinhood is developing a cryptocurrency platform of its own. Largest transaction in crypto history. Deribit and Coinbase. In the steady coin game, Meta has returned. Ethereum released a significant update. Bitcoin destroyed $100,000. Get up, family. Real-time development is underway to create online stock markets. It's also really awesome. Indeed, folks, a lot has been going on in this area. Additionally, you may actually miss a lot if you blink. You know, it's sort of ridiculous, but everything are just becoming faster and faster. And I must admit that we have seen more and likely far larger upgrades in this area in the last 5 months alone than we have in the entire history of, say, 5 years. Thus, we have seen more announcements in the last 5 months that are far larger than those made in the previous 5 years. And I do believe that a large portion of this is undoubtedly related to the SEC's anti-crypto campaign and other initiatives that significantly slowed down this innovation. At this point, everything is just flowing at once. However, this is really thrilling. Now that we're talking about this, we head over to Brad Garlinghouse because he recently brought attention to what Scott Bent said, which is that stable coins are exploding globally for their real-world applications. This should be evident from the volume of recent announcements in traditional finance, fintech, and cryptocurrency. The US will benefit from this technology sooner rather than later if it can enact practical, transparent regulations. In case you missed it, Scott stated that the world needs American leadership for stable coins and other digital assets to flourish globally. By not advancing the Genius Act today, the Senate lost a chance to demonstrate that leadership. Yes, the Genius Act was postponed, in case you missed it. This law is a once-in-a-generation chance to increase U.S. influence, financial innovation, and dollar supremacy. Without it, stable currencies will be governed by a patchwork of state laws rather than a more efficient federal structure that promotes growth and competition. While American lawmakers fidget, the rest of the world watches. The senators who voted against U.S. inventiveness today have a straightforward decision to make. Either take the initiative and lead, or observe the offshore movement of digital asset creation. You know, there isn't another choice. We need this to happen in the US because if it doesn't, it will only pick up speed outside of the US. However, this is a huge update and a huge vote of confidence for many of these great stablecoin initiatives that are starting to launch in this space. Of course, ROUSD undoubtedly comes to mind. In fact, it's probably the first thing that comes to my mind, along with many of yours. Now, we also have Monica Long here, who discussed why businesses can't ignore stablecoins on stage at Stripe sessions today. The fact that Stripe recently introduced stable currency in more than 100 countries coincides with this. We will discuss that in a moment. A few things we've discovered throughout time. First and foremost, blockchain payments require local rail connectivity, which is contingent upon bank partners having regulatory clarity and comfort. Compared to 2 years ago, our current situation is noticeably improved. 2. Being a software-only provider is both alluring and extremely difficult. That's why we currently have 60 licenses. 3. In order to compete with conventional FX markets, stable coins require liquidity across international currencies. By the way, they're attempting to use Hidden Road to address the next industrial difficulty. The acquisition is centered on foreign exchange markets. We also know that in addition to ROUSD, Ripple is probably going to start more solid cocoin projects. ROYN, RO Euro, RO Pound, and similar things will begin to appear. However, I think it's crazy that a lot has changed in this area. That's why I mentioned that the last 5 months had seen more and larger changes than the previous 5 years, which I find absurd. And it merely illustrates what might occur if innovation and this kind of technologies are also accepted. We really need to embrace this technology at this time. We run the risk of it going offshore if we don't. Therefore, I do believe that this is the moment to take action. Additionally, though, We have from Stablecoin Insider, May 2025, Stablecoin Upgrade. Here are some observations that are worth discussing after monitoring the most recent advancements. Since their legal battle with the SEC is going their way, Ripple's USD is really gaining traction, particularly in cross-border use cases. Due to its consistent currency transfer speed and affordable costs, Tron has swiftly emerged as the leading chain. A new gold-backed stablecoin on Polygon called Gold Stay might be useful in shaky economic times. Naturally, there was a delay in the Genius Act. Meanwhile, increasing steady coin trade volume points to increased market trust and liquidity. There is a little yet noticeable change. What are your thoughts on this? Indeed, things are beginning to pick up speed, and the ROUSD is gaining a lot more traction. Additionally, it is growing into a much larger portion of the stablecoin market. Shall we return to Stripe? Given how important this is, let's take a closer look. In fact, given that Stripe has more than 200,000 followers, more than 250K, this is most likely one of the largest updates we've seen about stable currency. They are also a huge e-commerce behemoth. Actually, I use Stripe for business purposes every single day. Additionally, it is among the largest e-commerce payment processing corporations in the world. Therefore, the introduction of stablecoin financial accounts is a major changer. Hold a steady coin balance and transmit and receive money using fiat and cryptocurrency rails that are available from 101 different countries. Here they actually demonstrate for us how this will operate. Additionally, USDC is visible here. This is merely to let you guys know that this is a game-changer. On closer inspection, Stripe is already integrated with a number of well-known web-based companies, such as Shopify, Airbnb, Google, Amazon, OpenAI, and others. Therefore, it only goes to show that we're coming closer to general adoption when we see increasing acceptance and adoption like this from names like Stripe. Every day, we receive around 500 million API queries, with a peak of 13,000 requests per second. Oh, and the uptime. 90% of adult Americans have made purchases from companies that use Stripe. More than 135 currencies and payment options are accepted. Stripe is a giant, to reiterate. It is quite enormous. Furthermore, we may observe that Stripe processes more than $1.4 trillion in payments if we visit their Wikipedia page. They simply made this 1.4 trillion payment volume back in 2024. Envision that crossing the crypto tracks. This is the future we are bringing about. This is really thrilling. We now have Bitwise's Matt Hugan here as well. Stocks will move on the chain far more quickly than most people anticipate. Robinhood revealed ideas for a service that would allow Europeans to trade U.S. stocks on Solana and/or Arbitrum within the past day. In her address, SEC Commissioner Hester Peirce discussed enabling the issuance, trading, and settlement of equities on blockchains. Additionally, Superstate announced the launch of Bell, a platform that enables businesses to issue and exchange tokenized shares on Solana and Ethereum. There is a train departing the station. This announcement is huge. With all of these changes, the fact that we are beginning to see updates like these just serves to highlight how widespread the cryptocurrency adoption phase is getting. Additionally, we instantly think of Ripple when we think of Robinhood. Why? The reason for this is because Robinhood is now creating a